make it, but he's stuck right now. They're voting in Ways and Means. Senator Murray is on the way. President Schuler, AFL-CIO President Schuler, and CWA member Kristen Sevick are with us. We all know that joining a union should be a right, not a fight. And over the last year, the American economy has recovered at its historic pace, thanks to the hard work and resilience of our American workers. But to ensure that everybody can benefit from our recovery, we have to focus on building the economy from the bottom up and the middle out. Unions are essential to building a strong middle class and improving the lives of workers and families. Regrettably, for far too long, workers have suffered from anti-union attacks and toothless labor laws that have undermined their right to demand a fair share of our economic growth. In just the last year, workers were subjected to a record number of violations that I said you were on the way.
We're one vote short for a judge on the floor.
Oh. You need me? I didn't vote.
We're still one vote short. We have two absentees.
Just last year, workers were subjected to a record number of violations that were filed against corporations like Starbucks, Apple, Trader Joe's, Amazon for illegal union busting. These companies threatened workers, forced them to attend captive audience meetings, closed stores, terminated pro-union employees. Yet these companies incurred zero civil monetary penalties. In fact, you can pay more for a parking ticket than you can for an unfair labor practice. Moreover, the pandemic reinforced the urgent need for stronger workers' rights. Workers across the country were forced to work in unsafe conditions for insufficient pay because they lacked the ability to stand together and negotiate with their employer. And despite the rise of anti-union attacks, a record number of Americans support labor unions, and now Congress must act to ensure that workers can join a union and negotiate for higher pay, better benefits, and a safer workplace. And that's why today I'm pleased to stand along my colleagues on both sides of the aisle in both chambers to reintroduce the Richard L. Trumka Protecting the Right to Organize Act, or the PRO Act. This legislation is named for one of our greatest labor leaders who devoted his career to protecting the right to join a union. Appropriately, the bill is the most significant upgrade in U.S. labor law in more than 80 years. The PRO Act holds unscrupulous employers accountable by establishing meaningful penalties for employers who commit unfair labor practices. It secures free, fair, and safe union elections by preventing employer intervention, and it cracks down on corporations, including those in the gig economy, that misclassify employees to stymie the right to organize. Many of you here today were also with me when I introduced the legislation for the first time several Congresses ago. Since then, the House has passed it twice with support from Democrats and Republicans, and we cannot afford to neglect this key priority while workers have their rights violated and employers go unpunished. It's time for Congress to finally pass the PRO Act and create an economy where everyone can succeed. So I urge my House and Senate colleagues on both sides of the aisle to join with all of us in supporting this critical legislation for workers, families, and our economy. And now it's my pleasure to turn the mic over to our Senate champion for workers, Chair of the Senate Helps Committee, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Well, Bobby, thank you very much for all the work you have been doing in the House. Let me thank Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer for being with us, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, thank you, Senator Patty Murray, Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick, and all of the workers from the SEIU, UFCW, thanks very much for being here. Let me also thank Liz Schuler, the president of the AFL-CIO, representing 12.5 million workers throughout this country. Liz, thank you very much for what you're doing. Let us be very clear. The American people are sick and tired of the unprecedented corporate greed and illegal union busting that is taking place throughout this country. They are sick and tired of massive income and wealth inequality and the fact that CEOs today of large corporations make 400 times what their workers make. They are sick and tired of unprecedented levels of corporate profits, while at the same time 60% of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. The American people want to know why it is that despite huge advantages and huge advancements in technology and worker productivity, every worker in America today is producing far more than 10, 20, 30 years ago. The average worker in our country today makes about $50 a week less than he or she did 50 years ago after adjusting for inflation. You got that? Huge explosion of worker productivity, real dollars making less money. Number of reasons for that reality. The fact is that the federal minimum wage has been stuck at an abysmal, embarrassing $7.25 an hour. Together, we're going to change that. The fact that corporate America has shipped millions of good-paying jobs to countries all over the world where they're exploiting poor people. We need a trade policy that works for all, not just the few. But the most important factor as to why workers are not advancing economically is that trade union membership has gone down by about 50% since 1983. And that is unacceptable, and that has got to change. At a time when unions today are more popular than they have been for decades, we have got to make it easier for workers to exercise their constitutional rights to form a union, not complicated. And most importantly, we have got to make it clear that corporate CEOs, even if they are billionaires, who are at the heads of large multinational corporations, you know what? They have got to obey federal law and end their union busting. And that is why we have got to make the PRO Act the law of the land. Under this legislation, we will empower the NLRB to substantially penalize corporations and hold their executives liable for violating labor laws. Under this bill, it will no longer be cheaper for corporations to break the law than to obey the law. We will ban captive audience meetings that are designed to intimidate, coerce, and threaten workers who support the formation of a union. We will prevent corporations from denying a first contract to workers who have successfully voted to form a union through binding arbitration. In America today, at a time when we are seeing, and here's good news, more and more workers wanting to join unions, it is unacceptable that over half of workers who vote to form a union don't have a union contract a year after their union victory. That will change under the PRO Act. Under this bill, once and for all, we will end the permanent replacement of workers who go on strike. Under this bill, we will override so-called right-to-work laws that have eliminated the ability of unions to collect dues from those who benefit from union contracts. Under this law, we will end the ability of corporations to misclassify workers as independent contractors or label ordinary workers as supervisors to prevent them from organizing. Under this bill, we will restore, rebuild, re-energize, and reinvigorate the trade union movement in America. And if we're going to grow the middle class in this country, that is exactly what we have to do. And now let me introduce Kirsten Civic, a member of the Communication Workers of America, who successfully organized an Apple store in Oklahoma City. Kirsten, thank you very much for being with us today.
Good afternoon. My name is Kirsten Civic. I'm a technical specialist at the Apple Store in Penn Square, Oklahoma City, where I've worked for almost 5 years. I love my job and what I do. Sometimes it's as easy as turning off the Do Not Disturb feature, but other times it's more complex and technical. I feel proud to repair a device that connects people and makes their lives better by getting back to what they love doing. I never saw myself becoming part of an organizing effort at Apple. I thought unions were for blue-collar workers, not workers in the tech industry. But my years at Apple have shown me that all workers, no matter what sector, face injustice in the workplace and deserve a union to make their working conditions better. My colleagues and I faced a number of challenges in our workplace, ranging from low pay, inconsistent schedules, job mobility, fair compensation for bilingual workers, and so much more. We tried to address our concerns with management, but we were always dismissed. We were told that they would look into their issue, but more often than not, there was never any follow-up. For example, our workplace has been flooded with raw sewage multiple times. Sewage dripped on devices, destroying thousands of dollars worth of products. Even worse, ceiling tiles soaked with sewage fell on top of employees, and we had to send them to the hospital. We were responsible for cleaning up the messes without any hazard gear or consideration for our well-being. It was disgusting and demeaning, and it took years for Apple to address. My colleagues and I are the face of Apple. We are the people the customer sees when they walk into the store. We decided to form a union because we deserve dignity and respect in the workplace. Once we went public with our organizing campaign, it was one of the worst, most stressful times of my Apple career. They countered our efforts by launching an aggressive anti-union campaign. We faced countless captive audience meetings, and they even brought in managers from outside to operate our store. Our management was too busy disparaging the union and trying to turn us against one another that they did not have time to run the store. At one point, we had 14 managers in our store, which allowed management more time to berate us in groups and individually about how bad the union was. Some of my coworkers would be so upset that they would cry after those meetings. It was hard to describe how terrible of a time it was there. These anti-union tactics are happening at Apple stores organizing across the country. A recently filed unfair labor practice charge alleges that stores in Des Moines and New York City, Apple held captive audience meetings where they issued threats to workers if they unionized. Apple illegally suggested that workers could lose their ability to have one-on-one conversations with their manager if employees unionize. Weak labor laws allow companies like Apple to conduct union-busting tactics in the hope of scaring workers from organizing. The PRO Act would put the power back in the hands of workers to make our own decisions about forming a union without the risk of losing our jobs. The bill imposes real penalties for breaking the law because right now it seems like companies can get away with pretty much anything with little to no consequences. It also bans the mandatory anti-union meetings that we face. I'm proud to stand up here in support of the PRO Act with labor champions like Chairman Sanders, Leader Schumer, Ranking Member Scott, Leader Jeffries, and Representative Fitzpatrick. As Tim Cook once said, at Apple, we do the right thing even when it's not easy. The right thing to do is for companies like Apple to allow their workers to organize free from intimidation and to support legislation like the PRO Act. We must pass the PRO Act to allow workers a fair shot at organizing because everyone across the country and any sector deserves a voice on the job. Thank you. It is now my pleasure to introduce Leader Schumer.
Well, thank you, Kirsten Civic, and we're almost related because my mother-in-law was a union leader in CWA in Brooklyn, New York, 1108. 1108. Anyway, oh boy, her union leader, when he walked by her desk, knew he was going to hear a mouthful. Anyway, it's great to be here. I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to just say a word. This is named for Rich Trumka. Every one of us in this room knows that he is looking down, smiling, but not just smiling, importuning us on to get this done. That was Rich Trumka. Thank you. I want to thank my great colleagues, Bernie Sanders, who just had to go vote. Patty Murray was the leader of our Help Committee and now is moved up even. She's leader of our Appropriations Committee and a great union leader. And my great partner in the House fellow Brooklynite, just already a wonderful, wonderful leader, Hakeem Jeffries. And we have another New Yorker in the room. He's not quite from Brooklyn, a little bit north, but he's pretty good, okay, Jamal Bowman as well. Okay, so first I want to thank you, Kirsten, for the great work you've done organizing an Apple store and in Oklahoma. It's easier to organize an Apple store in Brooklyn than in Oklahoma. So I know how hard that is. But it's hardworking people like you who remind us of the importance of protecting that right to organize. You are emblematic of the inspirational union organizing energy that is happening across the country. We are looking at so many new industries that people thought unions couldn't go near and organizing them. And in that regard, the best is yet to come. We're going to be organizing everywhere. So we're here today to introduce legislation, of course, that will make all of that a lot easier. It will provide a vote to hardworking Americans like Kirsten that will empower them as they bargain for better wages, benefits, and safer working conditions. And as Bill and some of the old-timers know, I've been very involved in this. I was the original author of something called Card Check. Oh, yeah. That was right before Pro. And my mentor came over to me and said, Chuck, it's a very important bill. Do you mind if I carry it? I said, of course, Senator Kennedy, you should carry it. And he did. But I've been involved in this for a very, very long time. And we're here today to stand with the working people of America as they fight for the right to have a voice in how they're paid, how their work environments are structured from sick days to flex time. Kirsten and millions of working Americans deserve a better quality of life for them and their families. They deserve the chance to enjoy a fair share of the extraordinary productivity and wealth they generate, as Bernie pointed out. Productivity is way up. Wages have not caught up. And the number one reason? Because the bosses have figured out ways to avoid unions. And we have to change that. It was unions that created the middle class. And you want to know the best way to build the middle class and strengthen it? Strengthen unions. That's what history shows. So the PRO Act does exactly that. That's why we're here today. I'm going to continue fighting for unions. We did make some progress in the omnibus. We got $25 billion to increase to the NLRB, which now has a good pro-union majority. It's driving those bosses crazy, and that's good because it's not just driving them crazy, that we're getting things done there, and that's why it's so important, and that's why a Senate majority is so important. Empowering the labor movement is highly personal to me. I deeply believe in the value of unions as a critical element in making our dynamic economy work at its highest level. And so that's why I was not just an original supporter of the PRO Act, but earlier versions, as I mentioned. The bottom line, unions have to be the powerful force in building the working class. In providing a path to the middle class, we not only close economic gaps, but we also close the persistent racial and gender wage gaps. Racial and gender equality go hand in hand with union strength, plain and simple. That's what history shows. So the PRO Act not only provides labor reform, but will empower marginalized workers, women, people of color, immigrants, the LGBTQ community, by empowering all these workers in the labor force to band together. So this is a great day, and I'm proud to be here. I'm going to tell you a little story to conclude before I introduce Hakeem, but promise you I'm going to do everything I can to push this legislation forward. It's passion for me. So when I first ran, I ran against the Democratic machine, an old-time corrupt machine in southern Brooklyn. This was before you, Hakeem. And the first day I went into my local barber, Frankie, on Nostrand Avenue. And I said, Frankie, would you put a poster in the window? He said, sure, kid. And then he said, kid, I never told you this. I'm not only a local barber, I'm the local bookie. You're the 50-to-1 underdog. How much you want to bet on yourself? No one thought I'd win. But guess who I had in my corner? The union movement. People like Paul Hall and Morty Barr, who were from my community, backed me. Morty Barr was CWA. And here I am. The night I won, I said to the labor movement, we're the only people in our little victory room because no one thought we'd win. I said, you were there when I needed you. I will always be there when you need me. Thank you, everybody. Now, no. Okay. Bobby Scott asked, did I bet on myself? Again, those of you my era will remember Paul Hornung and Alex Karras, football players, bet on themselves and got kicked out of football. So I thought something was wrong with betting on yourself. It's now my pleasure to introduce, truly, the minute I met this guy, I knew he had enormous potential. And when he decided to go into public life, I was so thrilled because I knew what good he would do. And now, of course, as minority leader, he has even more opportunity to do all of that. He's an amazing man, a pro-worker person, cares about people, really smart, reaches out to everybody, and everybody likes him. Our great minority leader, soon to be majority leader, Hakeem Jeffries. Speaker.
Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. Good afternoon. What an honor and a privilege to be here. Thank you, Leader Schumer, for your tremendous leadership and efforts on behalf of working families and organized labor all across the country. To all of my colleagues in government, certainly thank Chairman Bobby Scott, speaking that back into existence. Chairman Bobby Scott for his tremendous leadership on behalf of organized labor, working families, hardworking Americans, year after year, decade after decade, and certainly in connection with the PRO Act. I want to thank Senator Sanders and Senator Murray, certainly Liz Schuler, an incredible leader of the AFL-CIO, as well as acknowledge some of my colleagues in government in the House who were here and or remain here. Don Norcross from the great state of New Jersey. As well as Johanna Hayes from the great state of Connecticut. I'm trying to go in seniority order, y'all. I want to get myself in trouble this early into the job. And then we've got, of course, Jamal Bowman, who was with us. He came in the class of 2020. He's a member of the Education and Labor Committee as well from the great state of New York. And then we've got some incredible new members who have joined us, pro-labor members who are going to be champions for the cause. Nikki Buzinski from the great state of Illinois. Chris DeLuzio from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And we were joined earlier by Jasmine Crockett, who's from Texas, as well as Greg Kassar, who's from Texas as well. I had the opportunity to grow up in a working class union household in central Brooklyn. And every single opportunity that I've had throughout life, every single opportunity that my parents were able to confer upon myself and my brother growing up in that working class neighborhood, being able to go off to school, being able to watch my parents work hard, but also be able to, as a result of working hard, provide a living for themselves and for their family is owed to organized labor. And that is the reality of the great American dream and the path. It was organized labor that built the great American middle class. It was organized labor that breathed life into the great American middle-class dream, which is that if you work hard in America, you should be able to provide a comfortable living for yourself and for your family, educate your children, purchase a home, and one day retire with grace and with dignity. That American dream is alive because of organized labor. And unless we continue to stand behind organized labor, that dream is at risk of dying on the vine of greed and others who don't believe in making sure that we can provide that comfortable living, that basic contract that has been a part of what the great American middle class and all those who aspire to be part of it have been about. And so that's why protecting the right to organize is so significant. It's serious. It's sacred. It's sacrosanct. It is necessary. If we're going to have an economy that is built out from the bottom up and from the middle out, as opposed to from the top down. And that is not America. That is not the America that we should want to live in. That is not the America that we should want to hand over to our children and to communities who are working hard to live that great American middle class dream all across this great country, which is why, for House Democrats, under the leadership of Bobby Scott, the PRO Act is one of our top legislative priorities. We will stand as House Democrats with organized labor today. We will stand with organized labor tomorrow. We will stand with organized labor forever until we get the PRO Act over the finish line. Thank you so much. And now it is my great honor to yield to another highly distinguished champion of organized labor, Senator Patty Murray.
Well, thank you so much. I am just so honored to be here with this amazing group of people in reintroducing the bill that I first led back in 2019. And you know, the idea behind this bill is so simple, and the need is really obvious. We know our economy is stronger when working families are stronger. And working families are stronger when unions are stronger. And that is because unions fight for higher wages for workers to take home to their families. Unions fight for the benefits everyone should be able to count on, high-quality health care that everyone deserves, or paid leave so parents can welcome a new family member into their home or care for a sick loved one, like pensions and strong retirement plans so they can enjoy a good retirement. That's not asking too much. That's asking for the American dream. Union fights for safer, fairer workplaces. And that is so important because making sure that every worker heads out the door, comes home to their families safe and sound. Making sure workers do not face sexual harassment in the workplace. Making sure they are not discriminated against and paid less. Unions fight for our American workers, the hardworking people that are on the ground in my home state of Washington and across the country who keep this country up and running. That is exactly why Democrats are standing with working people, not giant corporations and billionaires. Democrats are fighting to make sure we respect the dignity of every worker by protecting their fundamental right to organize and strengthening unions across the country. That's exactly what this bill does. So we're here to say, Senate Democrats are pro-worker, we are pro-union, and we are ready to pass the PRO Act. And it is so fitting to me that the bill that we introduced this year is named in honor of Richard Trumka. He was a champion for American workers. He deserves to get this bill across the line with us. So thank you very much to all of you. Thank you for being here. Liz, turning it over to you.
Thank you, and good afternoon. It's getting hot in here. I think it's all the fire of these workers that we see up here. Thank you so much, and I know Senator Sanders will be on his way back. I just want to thank him, Leader Jeffries, of course, Leader Schumer, Representative Scott, Representative Fitzpatrick, Senator Murray. This legislation just shows the true champions of working people. They're right here with us. And the most important voice in the room, of course, Kirsten, who I know the CWA is so proud of you, but we are all so proud of you in this labor movement for standing up, taking a risk, doing something that just is a true act of courage, and it should not be a true act of courage, but it is to stand up and really fight for your rights. We have your back. I just want to say that. We have your back. It shouldn't be this hard, I think you said, Congressman, to form a union. It's our freedom. It's our right. We have a lot of union leaders in the room, I know. I do want to point out Mary Kay Henry, president of SEIU, is here. We're going to be talking about Starbucks workers, which is a campaign I know that is really emblematic to among so many examples of what we're talking about here. And I also want to say thank you because naming this bill after Richard Trumka, just an incredible labor leader and friend who deserves it more than anyone. It's so fitting because he was relentless. Anyone who knows Richard, he was relentless on the PRO Act. He knew that we could not truly build an equitable economy or protect basic rights of tens of millions of working people unless we change the law. So let me share with you what I heard a few months ago from an Amazon worker named Ezra Hudson in Bessemer, Alabama. We all know the fight going on in Bessemer, Alabama, an incredible organizing effort going on at Amazon there. So what did he get for taking the simple step of joining the drive for a union in his workplace? It's a trick question because he got fired. He got fired, and Amazon, of course, found an excuse to fire him the minute they found out he was one of the union supporters. And if you look at Starbucks, you look at Tesla, at the biggest corporations in this country, you see that story again and again. Lies, threats, retaliation against workers exercising their rights to join together. And you know what that says to me? It says these companies are actually scared. They're scared because they know what we know and what Ezra and all the organizers in Bessemer know, what more and more young workers across America know and they're waking up to every day, and that is that organizing together is powerful. Collective action is powerful, and coming together in a union is powerful because you have a voice and you have a seat at the table. And something else Ezra said about Amazon after he was fired, he said, they didn't think that I would fight back. They thought I would just walk away. Well, that's what every CEO and corporation doesn't get. We don't walk away. We fight back every time. And this legislation, this is how we level the playing field. This is how we stop the intimidation, the lies. And this is how we let workers decide for themselves if they want the power of a union. It's a radical idea, I know. Deciding for yourself, right? Corporations like Amazon, like Starbucks, like Tesla, they're going to do everything they can to stop the PRO Act because they know that unions have their highest approval rating in 50 years, it was said, right? And if we fix our broken labor laws, working people are going to keep coming together in greater and greater numbers because they cannot, these corporations cannot stand a world where working people get their fair share of the profits, get decent health care, and good benefits. And as was said earlier, this is a basic freedom. This is a civil rights bill. This is an equalizer. And these companies know that when we make our case for real change, we win. Thank you so much.
So there you have it. We want to thank everyone for coming, especially our union friends behind us, and particularly those from Local 8888, steel workers, Brother Spivey. So thank you very much. Talk to your legislators. We need to get this thing passed. We've got over 200 original co-sponsors already. Thank you. Who's got my hat?